by the military-industrial complex.
It could be seen to move violently forward, violently forward, violently forward.
I'm just a patsy.
Let's win there.
I have a dream.
I said this once or twice, but it bears repeating. If you like your current insurance, you will keep your current insurance.
You think about the Army and the Navy and the missions they run to protect the world, they run on SAP.
You have done a really spectacular job. I guess pretty much everybody at this table is your customer, so
Exactly.
that's not so bad.
Exactly.
I want to congratulate
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And we're back. Wait, I need the, can you hear me, George?
I can hear you, Peter. How are you?
I'm great. I'm using my, I'm a week away from getting a mixer so that I can get all my mics set up, but I just need to make sure that you can hear me. And if I cut out, I think I actually know how to fix that this time. So, and as luck would have it, the tow truck that was directly outside of that window for the last 15 minutes has just driven away. So that seems to be, the luck is with us. What's that background you got there, George?
Well, you remember Megadeth, the band.
I do.
And what we want to avoid is Megadeth. Megadeth isn't good. Megadeth is bad, with mega being millions. And
sure.
millions of people dying is bad. Millions of people dying in my book is worse in a bomb type thing than thousands of people dying, like let's say in 9/11.
Yeah, like mega. Yeah, well, I posted a story a couple of days ago on. I just took two sections out of Michael Hoffman's book, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, and Michael Hoffman would argue, I think, that naming a band Megadeth, the whole idea of that is that you put this idea of Megadeth out there into the videodrome, right? So that it becomes at the top of somebody's mind, so that they're thinking that that's a possibility. And what George and I decided that we would do today is that we may have a little debate, because I think George is on the nukes are real team, and Peter leans heavily towards the nukes are a psyop team, and so I just thought that we could talk about that a little bit today, and so if there's nothing else that you want to mention first, we can start there.
Sure,
go
you
ahead.
go. Well, I just, I'll just throw the first salvo out there. There's some stuff on Netflix isn't bad. There's a Turning Point, which is their kind of historical documentary series. They do Vietnam and other things. There's one called Cold War, and there's a whole episode on, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but there's many others. And you can see, the doctors peeling the skin away from the kids, and and I'm not saying that this couldn't be caused.
Okay, I just want to be clear here. I'm not saying that there weren't huge fireballs that went off in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I'm not saying that.
Okay.
What I am saying is that and that there wasn't a huge amount of death, because I believe that there was probably huge fireballs and there was probably a huge amount of death. What I'm saying is that I don't know if they could fit a device on a B-29 and drop it out of an airplane with pinpoint precision. Only the second time, Hiroshima would have been only the second time they ever exploded one. And if we ever take a look at like the space program, like you take a look at all of the early NASA flights and all of those other things. It took them quite a few tries before they got a rocket to just kind of fly straight in the way that they wanted it to. So,
yeah, there is again, I Netflix is a punch away on the button. So the one I think it's the second episode, third episode. Maybe it's the first episode, but anyway, they talk about this girls' school at a local island nearby where they did the test bomb,
right?
And the bikini bombing, and then there was the other islands that were close by, and then they did the first one at Alamogordo. There was a girls' school, and they had the snowflakes in the middle of the day,
right?
And they all ended up dying before they were like 30 of radiation poisoning.
I'm not saying that didn't happen. And in fact, I would say that you could probably use plutonium and ashes to create a mass cancer event like that as part of the PSYOP in order to be able to kind of reinforce the idea. Here's what, Mark Kulak, I have to give him credit. He's the guy who got me started this way. But it wasn't until I really started looking at epistemological warfare and like how we know things that I started to formulate this idea. And one of the breakthroughs that I had, I don't know, about 2 or 3 months ago, is that Rand Corporation is in Santa Monica. Like it's a couple miles this way. And Santa Monica is Hollywood. Like Santa Monica is basically Hollywood. And I started playing around with the idea that what Rand Corporation actually does is that they produce white papers for kind of like science fiction white papers that they sell to the world as something that's real, because it's much less expensive to convince everybody that we have, for example, a neutron bomb, than to actually go make it. Like 8.5 by 11 white paper with black copy print on it is pretty inexpensive compared to like building a neutron bomb, right? But if we back up to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they're fusion devices, right? Fusion, is that?
Well,
fusion, or I always get the fission fusion thing.
Those first two were fission bombs. One was a bullet type, and the other was an implosion device. But later on, they did come up with fusion, which is you throw in the tritium and deuterium, and then it fuses into becoming a helium, and the excess is given off as energy. So that came a little bit later with thermonuclear.
Right.
With H, that's the
and you did that in 8th grade in your science class, right?
We did the reaction with a pencil. Yeah, we did the pencil and added up the atoms and added up the for the what do they call that, stoichiometry or whatever it was, to make sure that the number of atoms and atomic weights on each side were equal.
So here's my thesis. My thesis is that the more fake something is, the more media that gets created in order to convince everybody that it's real. And so, and there's a line at the end of Dr. Strangelove where the Russian ambassador goes, "The fools, the fools! What's the point of what is the point of coming up with a doomsday device if you don't tell everyone you have it?" And again, I've been revisiting Michael Hoffman's book, Psychological Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, and the way that Hoffman explains the kind of dirty tricks that the cryptocracy, as he calls it, plays on humanity. This is exactly the type of joke that they would play. That is, they would go kill hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people in the case of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And then they would tell people that there was that it was a magical device that they have. And again, my definition of magic is when you take something that's self-evident, like, I don't know, a barge filled with ammonium nitrate maybe, and TNT, and then you explode it in the middle. I went and I did a quick check here. I'll show you what I've got here. Hang on. Share screen. And here we go. You know, I'm just going to Google Maps here. And here's the hypocenter of Hiroshima. And it's right next to this river. Now, I don't know how tall these bridges are, and I don't know if these bridges were there in 1945, and I haven't gone and looked at the after-action aerial reconnaissance photography of Hiroshima to see, you know, what the state of the bridges are or anything, but there's a river, like, pretty close to the hypocenter, and if I type in Nagasaki, again, this is a hypothesis right now. Again, here's the hypocenter, and here's a river that's running right next to it. So my thought is, and again, I'm just guessing here, is that if you were running a James Bond-like operation, and you had everybody looking at the sky, afraid of this bomb, and you managed to sneak a barge filled with ammonium nitrate and TNT up this river, and you set it off at the same time that a B-29 was dropping a black object out of the sky, you might be able to convince a lot of people, even the people on the B-29, that they just dropped an atomic weapon. It's just my guess. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, well, and this is why, you know, there's been an extensive citizen science research into both the Nagasaki and Hiroshima, as you know, and with extensive measurements on radiation and extensive interviews of where people said they were at various times, and extensive analysis of the damage to see if that's in concert with the thing. And the radiation is the big, you know, the radiation. Now, I'm not saying the barge couldn't have a whole bunch of nuclear material on it and that, you know, cast the radiation in that way. But there is a big radiation footprint to these things, and so
it's interesting that you say that, because there's an article. I didn't write this article. GPT wrote the article. So full disclosure, but there was a book that was called Hiroshima Revisited by Michael Palmer, where he goes and step by step goes through all of the different things that you're talking about. And there's actually even a video of him talking about it here a little bit. He doesn't agree. He doesn't agree with that analysis. He thinks that that all of those metrics that you would use to determine whether or not there was actually a nuclear weapon at Hiroshima and Nagasaki are not there. And it's based on a guy who actually showed up there a couple weeks later and did a bunch of measurements. Alexander P. D. Svertsky. Let me see if I can open this up and change to this tab. So this guy apparently showed up in Hiroshima and measured a bunch of this stuff, and he did not think that the evidence was there that nuclear weapons were actually used. So let's just jump. I'm just going to jump to what the implication is here. The implication is, for me, is that in order for them to get away with the fact that there aren't any nuclear weapons, the Russians would have to be in on it. And so would the Chinese, and so would the Indians, and the Pakistanis, right? And the French, and the British, right? They'd all have to be in on it. And what they could have done, again, I'm spitballing here, is that they could have made an agreement that, A, they could take all of this money that they are earmarking for the development of nuclear weapons, and then they could do something else with it, right? The second thing, and that would be the same for every country. So the Russians would have a slush fund, the Chinese would have a slush fund, the Indians would have a slush fund. They'd all have slush funds, right? The people who wink know about it. You could use the CIA Jesuit style of Manhattan Project style of compartmentalization. So you could have a bunch of people working on projects They're all getting funded, building missiles, building warheads, building all of these other things, but they're not really actually. It doesn't actually even really work, right? We could test a missile, an ICBM missile firing out of a missile silo in Nebraska or out of a Trident submarine, right? But we don't ever set off those warheads to see what happens. You know what I mean? So my thesis is that the more fake something is, the more likely that they're going to be making movies, they're going to be making History Channel specials, Time Magazine, Time Life, or Newsweek magazines, or the Daily Mail in the case of Great Britain, or the Times of London, are going to do all kinds of what I would say psychological framing that always is talking past the sale. It's always telling you, oh, this thing already exists. So why do I think that that's what's going on now? The reason I think, and the last piece of evidence that I have is the story that is in Jefferson Morley's The Ghost about James Angleton being a co-conspirator and helping the Israelis smuggle the Apollo uranium out of the United States of America to Dimona, right? So that the Israelis could have nuclear weapons too, because it's the only way that the Israelis could defend themselves from the Arabs in the 1960s is if they had their own nuclear weapon, right? And there's also rumors that run around in the myriad of reasons why John F. Kennedy was assassinated. One of them is, John F. Kennedy was about to bust them for having the bomb, which I also think is in Jefferson Morley's book, along with the Angleton reference. So the question then becomes, what was Angleton's job? Angleton was the chief of counterintelligence. And what does counterintelligence do? They do double agents who are all liars, right? He manages all of the lying. Counterintelligence chief manages all the lying. So wouldn't it make sense that the counterintelligence chief who manages all the lying is in charge of setting the biggest lie of them all in place, which is that A, nuclear weapons exist, and B, somehow we gave them to the Israelis, and C, nobody ever got punished for that. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. But they didn't get, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg didn't get busted for giving the uranium to the Israelis. They got busted for giving it to the Soviets, even though, what's his name? Colonel, no, who was the colonel who was up in Nebraska or up in North Dakota?
Right. The guy who gave all the metal uranium.
Yeah. What if his story, what if his story was to be a whistleblower to let everybody know that we had leaked this, the nuclear secrets to the Russians, and that's how the Russians got the nuclear secrets. It reminds me of that when you first started. There was that story about how the Svetlana, who was the Russian woman who was Mike Flynn. Wasn't Mike Flynn counterintelligence?
Among other things, I think he was.
So there was that Svetlana woman who wrote the book on how the Russians got the B-29 bomber, right?
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the. I can't remember her last name, but yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess the point that I'm making, because what really made me start thinking about this is that I'm redoing all of the books in the Duke Report, and I'm going through every book, and I'm summarizing it, and I'm reviewing, what I knew about it, and there's so much stuff. So I'm going to float this. Okay, I'm not saying this is true, but I'm going to float this. I have this assumption that basically we're still dealing with the British Empire, okay, and that people who are English or have English accents who are not actively telling you that the British Empire is behind all of this are highly suspect to me. And likewise, people who went to Oxford. So I'm going to talk about somebody who I have a great deal of respect for, who I really like. Okay. And I've read a lot of his books, and I've spent a lot of money buying his books. Okay. And that's Dr. Joseph Farrell. Okay. I like him. Okay. He's a good guy. I think, he comes off as a good guy. But between him and Dark Journalist, who is from Boston and always dresses in that costume, he's always got like the black suit and the white shirt and the black tie. And did I do that? I think my mouse did that. Hang on. Anyway, between these two guys, if you just look at the metadata on these two guys, and I'll bring it back to nuclear weapons here in a second, Farrell is all about Nazi secret weapons, the Bell, which you have criticisms of, right? Which could be a time machine, or it could be, he's always talking about these kind of, I would say, supernatural kind of ideas that are associated with, kind of like Catherine Austin Fitts. When Catherine Austin Fitts was on Danny Jones, she said that Mr. Global is generational wealth and people who are in direct contact with, Satan or Lucifer. And I use both of those. I don't use those terms interchangeably, either or. But in any case, Courtney Turner, talks a lot about theosophy. And theosophy is this idea that all religions can come together. Okay. And so Dark Journalist he talks a lot about Rudolf Steiner and the 8 spheres and all of this kind of theosophic belief system. But I have a thesis, and my thesis is that magic is where you take something that's a self-evident truth, right? Like a barge filled with ammonium nitrate and TNT, okay? And then you wrap it in a mystery, and the mystery is it's a nuke, okay? And then you put in between the truth, which the self-evident truth, and the audience, you put a magician, right? Which we could call a doctor or a general or somebody like that, who's in charge of telling us the way that things happen. And as part of the epistemological warfare component of it, you might go out and start, huge departments in major universities where people are studying all kinds of different things. But, and the idea is that these people are all working towards building a newer, better bomb or something. But at the end of the day, we never see these things go off, right? We never really see them happen. And so this brinksmanship between, I'm going to bring it to the current event, the brinksmanship between Trump right now and the Iranians, why would, if nukes were really a thing, why would Vladimir Putin take the risk of doing the special military action and invading Ukraine if he thought he might get nuked? Okay? Because he's going up against Ukraine, but Ukraine is more or less aligned with the West, and there's many countries in the West who have nuclear weapons. Why would he do that? Well, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. In that case, the nuclear deterrent doesn't really exist, does it? And now the big excuse, like the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, are all about making sure that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. So we're going to go flip their government and kill a bunch of people. I mean, how many people died in Iraq? 1 million? It's like we're going to go kill 1 million people to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon. Well, if they don't really exist, then that just winds up becoming a giant excuse. So I've been doing all the talking here, so I'm going to.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, don't stack too many up because I got to get a chance to get in. So I went to Las Vegas and I went out to as close as I could get to the nuclear test site, and I interviewed as many people, and I did interview somebody who worked and went into the nuclear test site for the nuclear cleanup of the nuclear test site. And I went to the Nuclear Test Museum, and I've really researched a lot of this, right? And there was I think it was Major Jordan is the one who gave.
Major Jordan. That's right. Yeah.
Major Jordan. Okay. So supposedly they had 928 explosions out there, and Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy watched one of them with the goggles and everything. So they do witness these things. I'm still not saying it's not ammonia or whatever, but Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy did go to one of them, and this was why, right after he was with Marilyn Monroe, by the way. So they were afraid, like, Kennedy was giving away the nuclear secrets or whatever. But I think maybe even a girlfriend got invited to one of the nuclear test explosions. Anyway, there was about 100 of them that were below ground, but about 828 or something, or, a lot, 800 some that were above ground. Now, there was the telltale mushroom cloud, like you see behind me. Right now, we saw the nitrate bomb in Beirut made a very similar mushroom cloud, where you were going with this nitrate thing. So I'm not saying that there couldn't be some magic in this, but as far as nuclear radiation and people going in and trying to do remediation at nuclear Nevada test site, there's a lot of evidence that they were actually nuclear explosions. But
sure, and you could create dirty bombs where you take a bunch take a bunch of uranium and you mix it with the ammonium nitrate, and you make a big explosion, and then it throws radioactivity all over the place, and it might fall out of the sky. It might fall out of the sky like Fallout 2, and fall on top of a John Wayne production in St. George, Utah, and give everybody cancer. Yeah,
I'm not saying that you can't fake it, and I'm not saying there isn't a lot of psychological operations in and around nuclear weapons. I agree with you that there's the most amount. We went up to, in LA, went up to Lookout Mountain Air Force Base where they did all the films for this, right?
Right.
And
which is now Jared Leto's house.
And Jared Leto letoed us in to his house.
Did he?
Yeah, he opened the gate. The Academy Award winner opened the gate. I have 5 witnesses. He let his love open the door at his house and let us see the whole deal there. I was walking with his girlfriend, and he came back and
did
said,
you shoot video?
I asked him if I could, and he said, but he'd prefer not.
Okay.
So he, and I honored him.
And what's the name of his band?
Something nuclear, some kind of nuclear.
I think
band.
it's like 5 Minutes to Mars or something like that.
It is. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat will tell me what the name of it is.
Yeah, and I don't think he has an island, but I think every year he has sort of his charrette idea is in this island of Lesbos or something. I think it's the island of Lesbos.
30 Seconds to Mars, I think. Somebody's saying 30 seconds, yeah.
But he was the nicest guy in the world. I went up to him, and all of our citizen journalists, there was 2 gates, and I was at one and they were at the other.
Crisscross says, I think Leto sold it.
No, I just was there a couple of weeks ago. He just opened the gate for us. So, and I got 5 witnesses. So no, he's there. And unless he did it in the last couple of weeks. So anyway,
well, it'll be on the MLS or on Zillow if he.
Yeah, it would be on the MLS. I don't think he left it because I think he liked it because, it's kind of cut up. It's one of those old 60s buildings where every ceiling is like 6'9". I mean, it's not one of those spacious, yawning cathedral ceilings that are
like this 1924 apartment, which has got quite a high ceiling.
Yeah, it's not that way. It's all the 60s kind of Rambler, prairie style type of thing, and it's also cut up with smaller rooms. So inside he spent a lot of money decorating it to make it not look like a military base.
Right.
With a reception area and so forth. But the outside still looks like a military base. So
yeah, well, I'm looking at those pictures behind you, and I'm thinking, because the lore of that place is that perhaps those nuclear explosion movies that were shown were actually produced in Laurel Canyon in that studio.
Yeah, and And so I'm not saying they couldn't be, and I'm not saying
there's a pretty if I had thought about it before the show, I would have gone and found it. But do you remember Close Encounters of the Third Kind? How there were those rumbling clouds that came across the horizon, as the aliens came to meet them at Devil's Tower, Wyoming. That effect was created by taking a big water tank and pouring milk into it.
So you've spent a long time in Hollywood, and so
I'm looking at all of those. I'm looking at all of those mushroom clouds behind you, and I'm thinking, if you put an orange filter on a camera and you turn the camera upside down, and then you poured milk, boom, from a hot, like with a lot of volume, like with a hose, going into a clear water tank, you can create things that look exactly like mushroom clouds, using milk in a water tank.
I agree with you, and it's the same sort of fluid dynamics that are happening in air versus water. I totally agree with that. That's just the nature of the fluid dynamics. But my point is that I'm with you on psychological covers for everything. Like, here's the guy who shoots, the team that blows the head off Kennedy with Robert Allen Hale and I.B. Hale. And they're supposed to be CEOs of ICBM companies. And we're going to start buying a whole bunch of Atlas ICBMs. We're going to build 20, 30,000 Atlas ICBMs. Who knows if they work or not? We have the, space thing to prove it, with the, Saturn V. But who knows if those ICBMs work? Who knows if all those, all those missile silos work or not? I don't know.
Well, I believe in low orbit space, which is why I don't believe that Elon Musk is going to Mars unless Mars is the name of a Pentagon low orbit battle station that would be great to deploy right after a bunch of aircraft carriers get sunk, because guess what? Aircraft carriers are like the 20th century version. I heard there's a guy who follows me on Substack now. I can't remember his name, but he just started following me today, and I was listening to a podcast that he did, and he said the aircraft carrier is the 20th century version of the chariot and crossbow. that when you compare things like aircraft, and that having manned war machines, like he was talking about spaceship troopers, and the idea that you would have men in suits with super armor or exoskeletons in order to be able to fight wars instead of just having a robot clearly isn't the way to do it. The way to do it is to not have any people involved.
Right, yeah. And this mech warfare, mechanized warfare, they've been working on for quite some time.
Right, right. And there's a book on the Duke Report book section that you recommended about that, right?
Yeah, that was written by David Grange, and he was the one who did the Libya plan for Hillary to take over Tripoli.
Right.
So yeah, if you think about it, if I don't have a man or a crew in the tank to drive the tank doesn't need to be as tall. I can put a bigger gun on it. I don't have to worry about recoil. I don't have to worry about oxygen. I can put more motor on it. All these things. I could have more of them. That's the other choice.
They could turn in a lot more G's.
Yeah,
they could put a lot more G's in a turn.
I could swarm them with AI. I could swarm them. Same thing for drones. Same thing for planes. With drones. Palmer Luckey. We might not get invited. You might not get invited to Palmer Luckey's next party, but all these things don't make any sense whatsoever. And this is the way Ukraine is going right now. Very few people, and so we should probably bring it to that. Vindy, whatever the name of this person is, says Iran 2 weeks from nukes for 50 years. Yeah, this is the point, right? This is the point that I'm trying to make. It's like, how does this impact what's going on right now? Because, and I thought that it was important for us to talk about, because we all fell for I did, the weapons of mass destruction. I fell for that hook, line, and sinker. And
I'm not sure that that I'm willing to go that another round, you know. And so the idea that, and this is the time, by the way, when they're trial ballooning everything. Like every different excuse for why we should start a war with Iran is going to get floated in the next 72 hours to a week, right? The people at Rand are typing up ideas as fast as they can type them up, right? And so they'll float all of these things, and then they'll see how they work on social media to see whether or not they can get people to believe it. And you know, one of the things that I wanted to do in doing this podcast today is just to kind of hope that people who are watching this put their critical thinking caps on and have a little bit of skepticism about what's going on, because I haven't listened to the content, but right before we jumped on the show, I saw that Steve Bannon was on Tucker Carlson talking about how people are trying to subvert the MAGA movement now. And it's like, I don't know if I posted this yet. Let me go look. So I've been working on the book section of the Duke Report. And one of the things that I've been doing is dropping whole books into Notebook LM. And then I started putting them up on SoundCloud. And the most recent one that I did, and I don't even know if I've posted it yet, that's why I was going to go check, is Guido Preparata's Incubation of Nazism. And on the 100,000-foot level, if you analyze what was done to Germany and then the Weimar Republic, right before Germany was destroyed, okay, at the end of World War II, it looks a lot like what's going on in the United States right this minute. It's like we're heading towards Weimar. I mean, I have no confidence that what's going on in Washington, D.C. is that the people that are on television in Washington, D.C. are in charge of anything, including Donald Trump. Like, I don't see it. I mean, when Donald Trump, and I've said this before, but when Donald Trump declares that the Council on Foreign Relations, Citibank, Chase Manhattan, and Brown Brothers Harriman are enemy combatants, and he sends some Marines over to take control of the Federal Reserve Bank, then I'll believe that he's serious. But until that happens, I just think it's status quo. I think we're, you know, it's all a school play, as George Webb would say.
Well, we'll find out real fast if Trump has control of the switch for the bunker buster or not. People, I mean, I believe nuclear weapons exist. I believe that Iran built the Fordow exclusively for a nuclear weapons program, not a nuclear power program. I believe the Iranian regime, when they say they're going to enrich past 60%, you only need to go to 20. The last commercial use in the road of nuclear enrichment is 20%, right? Again, this is a framework. This is not necessarily truth, just my framework. I think it's Trump's framework too. And so the regime has decided, in my framework, that they don't have to listen to the international community anymore. They can go ahead and pursue a bomb. I believe the bomb was given to them with fissile material from the DNC and Hillary Clinton. And I went to Piketon, and like you say, Peter, I went and talked to a lot of people who said the containers are empty. There is no megatons to megawatts, and all the missiles that were supposed to come to Piketon never made it there. So I can either believe one of two things. It was all a ruse to begin with, or it was supposed to get there and Hillary Clinton sold it all off for the Iran nuclear deal.
Or it was never there in the first place.
That's what I'm abjuring that as the first option possible. But I tend to believe the second thing because of the whole international situation that's going on right now.
Right, but I mean, killing people with plutonium is relatively simple compared to like building a nuclear weapon and then delivering it. You know, it's like there's magnitudes of complication difference.
I want people to understand I'm not for attacking Iran and getting.
Oh, I'm not for attacking anybody
in the war and so forth, but I am, and I did a show this morning that I said I am for the bunker buster because they've gone and, you know, like I always say, a Hiroshima suntan for kids is bad. And I look at a million kids getting Hiroshima suntans, and I think that's not good. So,
well, I think you're making my point, George, because if there was no Hiroshima suntan, then the bunker buster is not necessary. Okay?
Correct.
Yeah.
It's the framework. I agree with you. If you believe in peanut butter, you got to believe in Peter Pan, and
Skippy.
Right. Yeah. Choosy mothers choose Jif. Right. So I do believe that. I do believe that Trump will, you know, put a GBU 57 in there. I hope he doesn't go any farther than that. I hope he doesn't kill the Ayatollah, but he might. I hope he doesn't go for the Iranian Guard, which is the Praetorian Guard, but he might. We'll find out tonight. But frameworks are really important. This is a really important discussion because, like you say, Dr. Strangelove, if you go to that documentary I was talking about with Ellsberg, working at Rand Corporation, he said, you know, Herman Kahn, you know, created this impression that there was, 20,000 missiles with Russia, with Khrushchev. And, Wohlstetter created this impression there was 20,000 missiles. And in actual fact, Tim Weiner is the commenter, the guy who wrote, I think, Legacy of Ashes. He said there was only 4. There was only 4 missiles. So all that time, Khrushchev had created this impression that Russia had all these missiles, and they didn't. So that supports your argument.
Right. So, and people are asking, let me see, I think it's somebody, Paulie Shortcut says, wouldn't an enemy nation admit that? No, because they're all in on it. See, if you're Joseph Stalin, okay, and you've got a side deal with Truman that we're going to tell everybody that we're building all these nuclear weapons, we're going to pull all of this money out of the tax base, okay, or out of the treasury, okay, and then we've got our own projects that we're going to go work on with that money, and we're not going to tell the public. Then you basically have a group of insiders in Great Britain, in France, in Russia, in China, India, Pakistan, and Israel, okay, who are all scraping money off into their own slush funds while they're telling everybody that they're working on nuclear weapons. Like it's a pretty genius idea if you want to create black budgets and you want to go finance all kinds of other kind of untoward things that you would never want to put on the books.
Well, Peter Sellers the interesting thing that Dan Ellsberg says in this Netflix documentary, he says he says Dr. Strangelove was a documentary. That very well could have happened. The Air Force could have run wild with, a response on an exercise and then said, well, what the hell, let's just stay with it.
But isn't that how counterintelligence works? You have somebody who's a whistleblower who goes out and they leak a bunch of information. It's like doing a 4chan drop or something. It's just a way to get a story out into the world that has credibility. I call it the Road to Damascus play. Paul is going around and he's rounding up Christians and torturing them and doing bad things to them. And then he's on the road to Damascus and he changes sides. Candace Owens is a liberal and then she's a conservative. What's his name? Russell Brand is a Satanist and then he's a Catholic. It's like the Milo Yiannopoulos, GCHQ Milo, is a gay American Republican. It's like the switching sides thing is as old as Venice.
Right. And believe me, I wouldn't be, if I believed nukes were fake, I wouldn't be recommending that Trump do the bunker buster. So I think I want to make that clear. And it's the framework. This is what your book is all about, which is, reframing reality. I also know Mark doesn't believe viruses exist, and I walk him through that and go back to when, we got the first virus isolated from the tumefacients, the tobacco plant, and then how the filters worked and everything. So you could step people through, but this is the same thing with flat Earth. You could say, hey, look,
Well, I'm convinced flat Earth is a counterintelligence program.
Yeah. I mean, all these things can be, kind of a contest of frameworks.
Yes.
And it's, I remember Descartes, or one of them, said, do real objects exist? And always the rejoinder was, well, step out in front of a bus and find out, if you don't think real objects exist. I went through this in philosophy class at Miami. That was the one place where you were allowed to have communist professors. My philosophy professors were all communists. So the framework is what's going on here. And if you really believe that millions and millions of kids are going to get a Hiroshima suntan, whether they're Israeli kids or American kids because of suitcase nukes, then you think, like I do, that taking out a military weapons factory that's making mass destruction weapons is a good thing, right? But if you think it's all fake, then it seems like a waste of effort and time, and that's the
I think the tell will be whether or not they take out the Bell helicopter factory at Isfahan, right?
I always want them to take out that Bell helicopter. I want Peter Strzok helicopter to be blown up. That's my one thing that I want. They never take out the helicopter factory at Isfahan.
Yeah, I mean, that's good metadata there, right? And did that guy that they were supposedly Bob, what was his name? Didn't they have somebody kidnapped, a CIA
Levinson,
guy?
Yeah.
And then, did they ever let him go?
I think he supposedly died in captivity, Bob Levison, and I worked with Robin Gritz quite a bit, and she was in charge of trying to get him. And then the day she found out that Andy McCabe and Bob Mueller were using that guy to sell weapons to Iran to keep up the scare, if you will,
right,
and that she wasn't supposed to go get him, and she wasn't supposed to save him. He was a double agent selling weapons on Kish Island.
Right.
She was really floored. She was like, Bob Mueller lied to me, Andy McCabe lied to me. And that's when her whole belief system, kind of, plummeted. Yeah. So it is.
Well, isn't that would be another reason why, going back to the fusion centers and the post 9/11 infiltration of the FBI by CIA, I can't think of a better reason why you would want CIA agents like Peter Strzok and people like that in the FBI, if not for doing counterintelligence, if not for doing being perceived to be doing the opposite job than they're actually doing, and in order to be able to sell that through.
Well, yeah, Peter Strzok, I totally agree with you that the 9/11 false flag so that we get, lockdown, surveillance, and cuts back on the Constitution, and then mass formation psychosis with the coronavirus so that we end up with 6-foot distancing and then all swabbing to get all of our DNA, all these things I agree with. J6 completely, for psychological operations, loading the buses up in Fayetteville. So it is, and that's, his father lives a mile away from Fayetteville. So these psychological operations do exist. For psychological operations, I've been to the, fort quite a few times. And it's really hard. And this is where the critical thinking comes in. It's hard to discern what's real and what isn't a lot. Because
that's why I think having frameworks is important, and then just running scenarios like we're running right now. So, when I heard that the nuclear gambit was being played, that's when I just started thinking, well, if they're fake, and again, I'll bring this back to Angleton for a second, and that's when it just hit me like a shovel in the forehead, the Angleton thing. It's like, why would the head of U.S. counterintelligence be implicated in stealing uranium from the United States of America, the country that he's sworn to defend, And the idea is that it's the Jews, right? Like they must have had something on Angleton, or he's a crypto Jew or something, and that's the reason that he's sneaking the stuff off to Israel. But it just makes so much more sense to me that the story needed to get leaked, and the person that was the most unimpeachable person to leak the story would be Angleton. And so Angleton said, I'll take care of this myself. I'll leak the story on myself. And guess what? Nothing's going to happen because the story isn't true. I mean, the uranium disappearing is true. And like I said, I think you could boil water. I think you could boil a lot of water with uranium. I think you can make electricity with it. I do. I don't know if you...
We went to those locations, Shippingport and so forth, the first one. The thing about Dimona and Israel is it really didn't stop the Arabs. You know, it didn't stop them in 48, didn't stop them in 67. Didn't stop them in 73. There was all those, conventional wars. I do believe that the gun cams that we're seeing, the bomb cams, I do believe those are real. I do believe those launchers are blowing up. I do believe that Israel's winning the war. I do believe there's air dominance for Israel, or at least air superiority for Israel. So there are certain things I believe, but it could be all just a video game. This is Descartes, saying, do real objects exist? It could all be just be a movie in your mind. It could all be Palmer Luckey with the Oculus.
Oh, I don't know if I go that far, but getting back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I was thinking about how, if you've seen the movie The Princes of the Yen by Dr. You haven't seen that movie, Dr. Richard Werner? It's free on YouTube. It's a great,
check it out.
Great film. Should have won an Academy Award. It's a really good movie. But the movie is about how the Japanese economy was rebooted at the end of World War II by simply printing money. And that all of the corporations that were in existence before World War II, like Mitsubishi, wound up having their entire infrastructure destroyed, all of their inventory destroyed, all of their capabilities destroyed, all of their workforce destroyed, and somehow they just popped back up after World War II, and again, I'm thinking out loud now, and I'm thinking, did Mitsubishi put the barges up the river? You know what I mean?
Well, the classic story, and this is one that Macduff, John O'Loughlin's dad, was close to because he was working for MacArthur at the end, and MacArthur became the governor of Japan. But the supposed story is they had a decision: should we go with, they had the emperor, should we go to total, Republican government with elected and so forth, or should we have sort of a fascist oligarchy? Right, with 3 car companies, 3 metal companies, 3 of this, and with these families. And they made the decision for whatever reason to go with fascist kind of 3 of everything.
Yeah, Werner makes the point that at the end of World War II that the Japanese economy never switched from a wartime economy after the war ended. That is, the banks... Part of the reason that the Japanese became so good at economy cars and cameras and transistor radios was because the central banks of Japan were only lending money to manufacturers who made those 3 things. And so they focused the entire industry of the country on, inexpensive cars, cameras, and transistor-powered devices, and they wound up dominating that. I don't know if it's true, but I heard once that Sony is actually an acronym. Have you ever heard that?
No. What is the acronym?
Standard Oil of New York.
No, I haven't heard that. I would say, given the DARPA situation and given the dominance of America at the end of World War II, there were people like Alan Dulles who said, hey, this is an opportunity. We can rebuild all of the industry here. If we tell them what to rebuild, we'll get their Unit 731 bioweapons, right? And then we'll put them into this new thing. They had all these inventions from the Office of Science and Technology with Vannevar Bush. One of the problems was the electronics that were in planes would vibrate, and they would come out, and then they would have guys that would have to reseat the tubes in the planes. So they said, what if we substrated all the circuits in like a silicon or something, and just put them in like making a layer cake? And that's
Bakelite. I think they used Bakelite, didn't they?
Right. And that became the basis of the transistor because of planes shaking their tubes loose, right? Why don't you guys work on that? Why don't you work on the transistor? And Shockley was doing it in Silicon Valley. And why don't you guys work on smaller cars? We're not working on smaller cars. Or two-cylinder cars and one-cylinder cars may be the only thing that they could afford. With Suzuki and Kawasaki,
right.
Like motorcycles. So that a lot of that was out of necessity, and they kind of snuck up on Detroit, if you remember.
I mean, there was some. I'm trying to remember where I was listening to a podcast a couple of years ago about how I think it was Suzuki actually stole Nazi German technology from East Germany. So it was technology that was originally, it had something to do with the way that the carburation was happening on certain engines. And Suzuki actually stole, using industrial espionage, stole the technology from an East German company, I think, that had been a Nazi company. There's all kinds of stuff. We'll have to go look at that later. So I guess the point, we can bring it back to current events. I haven't really been paying that much attention to the current events. So can you bring me up to speed on where exactly we are with Trump and threats and bombings? And
sure.
I see bombs and missiles. There's all these videos of all these missiles going, and it's like, yeah, maybe that's real. It's like,
yeah. Israel did the preemptive strikes and hit a lot of missile launchers, and then
preemptive
or whatever.
No, I'm sure that's the word they use, and it's
sneak attack.
It's sneak attack. It's
but,
is that what the Japanese called Pearl Harbor? It wasn't a surprise attack. It was preemptive.
Well, the only difference here, your framework, what you believe, but the mullahs had come out and the top leaders and said, we're going to destroy Israel. We're going to create a bomb, all these threats 2 days before. So what the Israelis did is a decapitation strike on a lot of the top Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and they knocked out a bunch of missiles. They didn't knock them all out. So then the Iranians sent a flock of missiles the first night and then hit Tel Aviv and hit Haifa. And then last night, same thing happened again. So this is kind of sort of day 4 in the war. And now Israel has said, well, we can't get to the bunkers. We can't get to Fordow because it's too deep. We need the United States to come in. A lot of people think this is the entrapment of leading the United States into the war, saying, well, only a B-2 can deliver the GBU-57, so that, Trump has to make the decision. And then as soon as Trump makes a decision, now they can take all of their, the DNC can take all of their operatives and terrorists in the United States, and they can start carrying suitcase nukes into, Trump's government buildings and then blame Trump, so that's kind of where we are right now. Trump's been trying to make the decision about, do we hit this nuclear enrichment center at Fordow?
Okay. So, yeah, bomb a factory it reminds me a lot of. So when my daughter was born, for medical reasons, we had to use baby formula, and I did a lot of research on baby formula. This is 23 years ago, and I was quite surprised to find out that all baby formula comes from the same company in the United States. There's a complete monopoly on baby formula. And by the way, baby formula isn't that good for your baby. So I don't need, I'll shout out to my daughter right now and apologize. I'm sorry that we did that. But in any case,
it was expensive too. I remember that.
Well, because I bought it all from the same, I bought it online to save money, and it was always on the same account. I got an accounting when my daughter finally went off of baby formula. Okay, $7,000 I spent on baby formula.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sure I spent that, and I went out in the middle of the night to go get baby formula so many times.
Right.
So
it all comes from the same company. And do you remember when Bill Clinton launched Tomahawk cruise missiles? I think it's the first time the Tomahawks were ever used, and he blew up some kind of a weapons factory in Iraq.
It turned out to be baby formula.
And Saddam Hussein said that wasn't a weapons factory. We were making baby formula. After I saw how much baby formula costs, I thought it probably was baby formula.
Probably was baby formula.
Probably was a baby formula factory.
It's these frameworks are interesting, and I like when you said you threw the book. I didn't know you could put a whole book into the.
Oh, it's great. I could show you.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I still feel like I need to support the author, so I buy the book.
Oh, I buy the books.
Yeah, and I buy sometimes the book on Kindle, and I buy the.
Oh, and I link. I put the Amazon link in and everything else. But let me show you where I'm at.
But I do like these recaps where the Google. What is it called? FM or LM?
It's called Google LM.
LM, and it creates a really very realistic podcast that's hard to. The only way you could tell that it's Google LM is if you've heard other Google LM podcasts.
Well,
and you go, oh, that's Google LM.
And it does occasionally completely screw up, and I'm willing to live with it. My wife does not like them at all. I have to listen to them with headphones because she. So you've tried it? You've tried?
Oh yeah. I read the last one, the Hitler, the Two Tales. I listened to that one. It was good.
Yeah, and I did one on my own book that I posted. Maybe I should show that. Okay,
play that.
I'm posting them on SoundCloud. Let me go to SoundCloud. So it's soundcloud.com/The Duke Report. And let me share this. And let's see. Is this it? And I have a playlist here. And let me go to my playlist, and I'll go to. Maybe I haven't added my book on. I haven't added my book on this playlist yet, so. Because, again, it's unannounced. It's still a work in progress. So let me see. Where's my library? Library. Recently played. Come on. I guess playlists, albums. Where's my uploads? Sorry,
Let's do it next time.
Let's do it.
We're told that the Al-Shifa factory was in Sudan, in Khartoum. So another one of those Bin Laden, Gopher Black joint ventures.
Okay, Self-Power and the Illusion of Democracy. There it is. All right, here we go. So this is my own book. So
Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Can you hear it?
The show where we take a stack of sources, articles, and research and really try to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge to help you become truly well-informed.
And today we're plunging into a truly fascinating and frankly often chilling realm, this whole concept of hidden power and maybe the illusion of democracy.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. And we're not just talking about vague notions here, are we?
Not at all.
Yeah.
To sort of set the stage, maybe think about these words from someone who definitely knew power dynamics, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. He said, "Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it."
Wow, that's a powerful statement, isn't it? It just immediately paints this picture of like invisible strings, hidden operators.
Exactly. And then you've got British Prime Minister Winston Churchill adding to that, maybe slightly more poetically, saying, "Time and the ocean and some guiding star and high cabal have made us what we are."
High cabal. So both of them, leaders at the absolute pinnacle of world power, hinting at some deeper unseen force shaping things behind the curtains. So,
All right, so I'm going to pause that. So I'm, you could drop a whole book. So what I'm doing here is that there's this thing called Notebook LM, which is Google, and this is free, by the way. Anybody can do this. Like, it's free for now, and all you do is you click add new, and you can drop any kind of file in here. So if you've got a book as a PDF, you can drop it in there. If you have an article from somebody's written a 10,000 word article on Substack or something, you don't have time to read it, you can drop it in here and it'll turn it into a podcast and you can just listen to it. So what I've been doing is I have on the Duke Report book section. This is a new book section. So I'm rewriting the descriptions of all of the books. So this is my description. It's an in-depth description of Guido Preparato's Incubation of Nazism. I'm using 11 labs. I'm not going to do this on every book because it costs me like, I don't know, I think it costs me like $1 per book to do this, but I'm rendering out this description. So right here it says, it's got the description. If you want to read along with it, you can listen this way.
The Incubation of Nazism by Guido Giacomo. Preparato reconstructs the strategic rationale behind British efforts to encircle, manipulate, and ultimately dismantle German geopolitical potential from 1900 to 1944. This analytical history asserts that Britain, guided by an unyielding imperative to forestall any Eurasian unification that might rival its sea-based empire, devised a long-term siege.
You heard the mistake?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. So again, every once in a while, it's like,
That's
but you know,
I've heard that. Mm-hmm.
But you and I grew up in an era where we had cassette tapes in our dashboards of our cars, so we're used to that, right? Every once in a while, your cassette tape gets munched.
And Peter, I've been told that some people had cassettes that, it was occasionally hot, and it would stretch the tape. So like they would have Beach Boys go, and everybody's gone surfing USA. Right. And so when they heard the song the next time with somebody else playing it, they went, everybody's gone surfing. and they go, what the hell are you doing? He goes, no, the song goes surfing. No, it doesn't. It's everybody's gone surfing. It's like, oh, damn, that was just my cassette tape.
Anyway, so I could go and do it all over again, but you know what? You could. My intent is to get people to go read the book. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to entice people into reading the book. It's also going to become, these descriptions are going to wind up being the most search engine optimized way that these books are going to get exposed to search engines, because Guido is completely shadow banned on everything. Like I know it's funny because I posted this picture the other day, yesterday. I'm kind of like just testing my audience right now, but I posted this picture, make America Great Britain again, right? Because if you take a look at what Trump's doing, he's very much acting like he's representing the British Empire. He's got his red Doge hat on there too. But I got like 5 comments from people blaming Qatar.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were at that meeting and they gave that plane, right? So, yeah.
Right. I got like 5 people blaming Qatar for everything that's going on right now. And it's like anybody but Britain, right? Anybody but GCHQ, anybody but MI6. You can, and that's why I think, I saw a story about Jacinda Ardern. It was on Substack. I saw a story about Jacinda Ardern. And again, there's a bunch of people who I follow because I generally agree with what they're saying. But the way that mere agreement works is that you lure people in by telling them all of the things that you believe that they believe. And then when they need to pull an audible, then they use those assets to move people in the it's okay to bomb Iran direction. Okay. Like that's what winds up happening. And this woman
I don't want to bomb Iran, just to be clear. I want to bomb the DNC assets that Iran has. So Iran, when we hit this, don't take it personally. It's just hitting the DNC sales assets.
See, I don't want to bomb anybody. I want to take them all and put them on a small island and turn it into a TV show that Mark Burnett produces.
I talked about that with the Maldives with Hillary and get her a little White House and give her controls that she can do. And then, the thing will tilt back and forth like she's in nuclear war, like a simulator, let her go to town as long as
emotion based.
Yeah. As long as she can't talk to anybody outside of the Maldives, I think it's the same thing as putting her in jail,
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about Napoleon, right? Like Napoleon tries to blow up Europe twice. And each time they didn't cut his head off, right? Everybody, how come the kings, when they do bad things, they get their head cut off? But when Napoleon does bad thing, they send him to an island. And then when he does a bad thing again, they send him to an island that's a little bit farther away with his own kitchen staff. And
yeah, I think there was a good reason for the first one. I can't remember Elba was Elba the second island or the first island?
Elba and then St. Helena.
I think St. Helena was second, right? But
yeah.
ere I was able, ere I saw Elba.
Yeah.
The reason was Napoleon was good for the movement of gold, right?
Yes.
Napoleon was good for the kings coming to the Rothschilds and borrowing a whole bunch of money for weapons so that they could keep their kingdom.
Well, I think the central bank of France was started within a couple of days of Napoleon taking power.
The War of 1812 is basically the story of Napoleon making the gold deposits all go to one place so that they could be easily swooped up by Napoleon. And then once he brought it all back to Paris, then we didn't need Napoleon anymore.
Right, exactly. And if you think about it, like Napoleon and Hitler in attacking Russia were both proving Mackinder's point that Russia is basically unassailable geographically. Like you can't actually defeat them geographically.
And it was for the Polish gold anyway, right? So
yeah. Anyway, well, we've been going for over an hour, George. So, and you know what? We've got a big audience. I think people like this.
I retweeted, and I've got my you turned me on to my YouTube, so I retweeted this to my audience on YouTube as well as Twitter. So there you go, a little bit bigger audience.
And how is your YouTube channel? Is it grow? Is it? Are the videos continuing to appear? Or
one got whacked already, and it was all I said on Father's Day is don't have your kid grow up to make bombs. Go have him be a doctor or a nurse or an engineer. So I was pretty disappointed in that. I don't think it'll be around very long, but make hay while the sun shines.
But I mean, you had 4,000 videos. How many do you have now?
800. Just a slice of what I had before, and they're the ones where I'm not in front of the various buildings. And so
it's your finger.
No, I don't have the finger ones either, which are the slides. I have more just for some reason. Out in front of a body of water, which is the least valuable. It looks nice, but when I go to the USAID, the juice, and I just talked to a couple of people that worked at USAID.
That's JUICE.
Correct.
Yeah.
And but we'll see if more of them come back. A couple of them came back. What started at 825, and then a couple came back to 860, but nowhere near the original 4,000.
All right, let me just run through the comments here, and then we can say goodbye. Okay, so Arthur said maybe there are worse weapons than nukes. Yeah, look, I think epistemological weapons are way worse because at this point, the Holocaust toll is supposed to be 6 million, and I think the epistemological warfare toll is like, I don't know, 500 million, something like that. So words wind up becoming really, really like much worse weapons. Thermobstable says Blavatsky was a Russian general's daughter who spied for the British. Yes. Like I said, the issue that I didn't come up with this, but what's his name? Wolfgang Smith made the point that almost all the Eastern religions are about the destruction of the self, and Christianity is about the perfection of the self. And so so there's an irreconcilable conflict between the two belief systems that theosophists don't talk about, which, like I said, in Eastern religions, the reason that you stick all these pins in yourself, or you lay on a bed of nails, or you slow your heartbeat down to one thump every 10 minutes or something, is because you're trying to demonstrate the destruction of the self, right? And Christianity is all about the perfection of the self. So I think they're irreconcilable. And so people who tell you that they can reconcile them, they're not telling the truth. So that's my back of the envelope assessment of that. Eden's Vision says, late to the class, we'll have to rewatch per real Toria Brooks, breaking President Trump to deliver a major nationwide address soon. Okay. I am not a crook. Is it going to be I am not a crook? Or
Trump's about ready to deliver an address?
Yeah, that's what somebody said, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be the B2s are on the way to pour it out.
Before we go, let me just see if I can see Trump address. Trump address. Diego Garcia, right?
I think it'll be, I told him 30 times, and they didn't listen. And now I've been given no choice, so I have to. The GBU 57's on the way.
Yeah, an hour ago, somebody said, breaking President Trump to deliver a major nationwide address shortly, according to officials, more experts. And yeah, I don't see it in my timeline. All right, let me see. Spoigi, is it official that life is a movie these days? No, I don't think life is a movie, and I don't think it's a simulation. I think our government is a television show. That's my analysis. Our government is a television show. It's a television show that can take your stuff and kill you. Okay, but in essence, your vote doesn't really have anything to do with how the people get on the television show. It's about as real as a reality TV show. And we all know that those things are cast, right? Rumble comment, Ire Frank, I'm not for attacking Iran and then running a piece saying bomb. Wait, do you understand what this guy's saying? I'm not for attacking Iran, then running a piece saying bomb the fake nuclear sites is confusing. It's confusing.
I think the comment is what's confusing. I clarified to say I do believe in real. I do believe it's a place that's only could make bombs, not just a peaceful. And I believe Trump is bombing it. So I believe that's crystal clear clarity.
Yeah, I agree with George, and I don't think we should be bombing anything. D.E. Sassoni says the Bellcopter inventor Arthur M. Young founded Institute for the Study of Consciousness in Berkeley in 1972. Do look into him, Peter. D.E. Sassoni, do me a favor. Write a brief and send it to me, peter@thedukereport.com, and then I don't have to go do that. Here we go. But consciousness, I wrote a whole thing about Nicholas Berggren and his Berggren Institute and consciousness on the Duke Report. If you want to know what I think of consciousness, I like the Greek definition of the word. It means the ability for me to see my own biases. Okay. And finally, last but where did George go? Did I hide him? Did I do that? I think George bugged out. Okay, comment on the No King rally. We'll see if George comes back. Jessica and I went to, there he is. Did you sneeze and hit the button?
No, I think I got hit with the Trump. I don't know. Maybe ICRG took me out. I don't know what happened, but I apologize.
George, did you go to a No Kings rally? No King rally?
No, I didn't. I followed up on some of the assassination squads that the governor of Minnesota had for supervised murder.
Oh yeah, we should talk about that. That was again, to me, it's like the kickoff for the Civil War. I was reminded of the Kobe Bryant crash. You know, it's like COVID got kicked off by the Kobe Bryant crash. So
starts with a blood sacrifice, and the reason is there's no turning back. You want to let everybody know there's no turning back. All right, we're going to kill a couple.
Right. This is a message to everybody else.
Yeah, this is a message to all the other Democrats. We're in on this overthrow of Trump. Right? If you turn around, you're going to get murdered. This is the Chicago way, put a coyote on the fence.
So who are they going to blame it on? The Iranians?
Tim Walz' guy is the one who killed him. There was
they caught him. They caught a guy, right?
Yeah, but 43 hours later, there was 2 cops watching him kill the last 2. They supposedly had a shootout. Well, let's see the body cameras. Let's hear the radio. Let's see the dash cam of the chase. How does a guy get away? He's supposedly out. The 2 cops are there at the victim's house. Then this guy pulls in somehow, the murderer. Then they have a shootout. Then the guy goes in the house and then kills the the state representative, the woman, and then gets away out the back. And then they find him 43 hours later.
So this is right out of Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. So
I thought of you as soon as it happened. I thought
in the Michael A. Hoffman book, and I could probably bring up my let's see, Secret Societies. Let's just go Hoffman. Come on, Peter. 1F, I think. Or no, 1N. Hoffman. Here we go. I put too many N's. Here we go. Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. Share this screen. Share this tab. Okay, where did it? It's not showing in my interface. Okay, stop. Present. Share screen. Here we go. Oh, I see. This book. Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. This is a hard book to read. I highly recommend it. I think I read it 4 times before I got it. It's not a very good big book. Michael Hoffman's got a big vocabulary. And I did, on the Duke Report, I did my Substack. I did, let's see, do a story a couple of days ago. I'll share this. Rituals in Plain Sight, where I took 4 pages from his book on something called the truth or consequences principle, which is the reason why the cryptocracy, as Michael Hoffman calls it, lets us know what they're doing. Because if they can shoot a president in the street and get away with it, it makes their perceived power greater, right? And he calls it the truth and consequences syndrome. But in this book, where he talks about it, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, he talks about how at the Son of Sam murders, there were Secret Service agents there at all the Son of Sam murders. So what is the Secret Service really all about? Like,
I think from the beginning it was about getting drugs from the north to the south.
From the Russells?
Yeah, there was so many Confederate amputee victims that had pain or various wound victims. The Secret Service seemed like the only thing they bothered doing was selling drugs to the south, which is the Red Cross, right? So, yeah, a lot of these things do need to be explored more. The Young, you know, somebody mentioned the Young was involved in the Kennedy assassination. And I think Young, the stepfather of Young was Michael Paine. And there was, you know, that's the one where Lee Harvey Oswald stayed at their house, Ruth and Michael Paine's house. So there's a tangential connection to Bell Helicopter. But right. Anyway.
So if you go to my SoundCloud, I've done a podcast on secret societies and psychological warfare. So you can go listen to it. But I highly recommend that you go buy Mike Hoffman's book, because I think it's, if you want to understand the kind of psychology of mass, he calls them psychodrama events. There isn't another book where you can go learn about this stuff. This is kind of like, this is it. But some people were asking about the No King rally. So I was sad. So there was a No King rally a couple blocks from my house. We went to the beach. I got sunburned. I'm really sunburned. But we went there on the way to the, we had to go through the rally to get to the beach. And I just felt sad. I felt sad that all of these people really think that their vote counts, and that they think that by having this rally that they're going to do anything besides reinforce the idea that their vote counts. And likewise, I have an equal amount of pity for people who are MAGA people at this point, because I think they're equally effective. They're not, their belief is on par with the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy, and what's the other one? Santa Claus. I felt sad. They all had signs, you know. They all thought that they were very clever. They think that the enemy is Donald Trump, and I think I share their frustration. I share the frustration of all of the people on the MAGA side too, but I think that their frustration, because that's what's been cultivated, as Eric Hoffer would talk about it. It's 1770. It was 1776. Now it's 77, 78. Number of people watching, George. I share the frustration of all of those people, but their frustration is misplaced. They should be looking at Wall Street and the City of London, because that's where their frustration is being manufactured. And the job of the politicians, whether, I don't care what country you're in, because it's all the same at this point, is to absorb the ire of those people. That's the politician's job, is to be the crash test dummy, as it were. And so I share the frustration of all those people, and I feel sad that they think that Donald Trump is doing anything except what he's told.
Yeah, I think you know, the idea of no kings and the idea of Doge. I think the psychological operation that Trump's going to cut your Social Security. Saw a lot of boomers. Trump's going to cut health care to immigrants. Trump's going to cut health care. I think that's it was very effective. Whoever's pushed this out, it's been very effective. And the people that I saw were like, okay, the king, you know, this analogy of the king's going to let him eat cake, right? The king's going to cut all the social benefits and then just keep all the cake for himself. I think that's the thing that they're trying to push.
He's saying the UK is dead broke. I'm talking about the oligarchy that runs everything. The oligarchy that runs the Bank of England and the Federal Reserve and Citibank and Chase Manhattan and Brown Brothers Harriman and all of those other owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Those people have unlimited funds. And I say unlimited because they print money. They're literally in charge of printing money. And they have no problem just when somebody is too big to fail, opening the vault and then just shoving a bunch of money across the aisle and bailing them out. So when I say the UK, I'm talking about the City of London and specifically, and Wall Street. They have unlimited amount of money.
Well,
And
at least we ended on a point we both agree on. Whenever they get in trouble, they just print more money. I mean, I'm in 100% agreement there.
Yeah. All right. Well, George, we've been going for an hour and a half. This has been a great thing. And I look forward to doing it again next Tuesday. And I think I'm going to do a podcast with Matthew Crawford tomorrow. So I have to go double check with him. But I think Matthew Crawford and I will be on all of these channels tomorrow also.
Say hi to Matt for me.
All right. Thanks for joining me, George. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you again next Tuesday. Bye now.
At 2.
Tuesday at 2. Bye.